Maybe the folks at Renault need to go into the control room, insert two keys into the computer, turn them at the same time, and reactivate the Flav. Yes, of course, Flavio Briatore. News broke about rumours of this recently, and whilst it may seem like complete and total nonsense, let's not forget in F1, strange things do happen from time to time. Okay, so it's actually happened. The Flav is back, and love him or hate him, it's a very unusual but interesting move. By the way, I'm not here to criticise what he's done in the past. This whole thing, it is what it is, but Renault Group believe that he can bring something to the Alpine team. So Flavio Briatore, the man who is responsible for every single championship Team Enstone has ever won, is now back in the team in the form of an executive advisor. And yes, we're all probably thinking the same thing. Desperate times call for desperate measures. And Alpine have probably exhausted all other options by now, so activate the Flav. He's old school, yeah, but let him cook. Let's see what happens. He's just one of these guys where if you see him talking to someone in the F1 paddock, you just know it's about serious business and not about the weather. Now, with about a season and a half to go until the regulation changes come in, it's very interesting to consider what changes Flavio could influence or actively push himself. This is a guy who could bring real-world F1 knowledge to a team that's lost its way after having been tried to run like a car manufacturer. He might even get Alpine to snap out of this weird trance that they've been in for the last few years. To even think that at one point Alpine could have had a lineup of Alonso and Piastri, a stonkingly good lineup by anyone's standards, thrown away under the watch of Alpine and their boardroom of Renault suits, who probably just see the F1 team as an inconvenience by this stage. Would this have happened under Briatore's watch? I don't think so. So let's plunge right into this French, British and Italian buffet and look at what Flavio Briatore could do for Alpine. By the way, if you haven't already, please click that little subscribe button below. It seriously helps the channel and I appreciate all of your support so far. So when the news of Flavio rejoining the team broke, it seemed very sudden, but let's just consider that these talks may have started months ago, maybe even before the season even started. And even back then, Alpine must have thought we need a little bit of extra help here. Now, I've had the privilege of speaking to various people who have worked underneath him at Benetton and Renault over the years. And more or less all have said the same thing. He's a bit eccentric, he's a bit passionate, etc, etc, etc. But all have said that they loved working underneath Flavio because he didn't try and get involved in all areas, he just let you get on with your job. There's actually a fantastic quote from Martin Brundle which says, "I'm not sure Flavio knew which was the front and which was the back of the car. He didn't need to because he had Ross, Rory and Pat Simmons at the time to do that. Obviously Flavio is a different character altogether and faces different challenges." And that kind of aligns with what I've heard. So what I can gather there from Brundle's quote and people I've spoken to is that Briatore is the business and politics guy. He doesn't need to get involved in the engineering side because basically he doesn't know anything about it. And in F1 today, where senior people in teams should appear to know everything about anything, having that aspect again in a team could be refreshing and a reminder that it's okay to not always have the answer. So from that, I wonder, could he encourage that kind of mentality into Alpine now, which from what we hear from the outside is very top heavy and very micromanaged. Perhaps he could remind Luca De Meo not to stick his neck into every single area and try not to get involved in everything that's going on. Now, in fairness, De Meo probably thinks he has to have a say in every minor thing to appease shareholders, partners, etc, but Flavio could suggest that isn't always the best way. There are still some seriously smart and intelligent people there, and Flavio is probably more towards the mentality of why hire smart people and then tell them what to do. I just have this sense that senior staff at Alpine were being ignored or overruled and they must have thought, just bugger this, I'm going to go try my job somewhere else. So perhaps him coming into the team now could help stop the rot. But something that is exciting is that Flavio does have an excellent track record in playing the game, making things happen and ultimately getting stuff done. After this, do some reading on how Flavio has secured certain driver contracts or engine deals, and some of it really is genius. Sometimes a little bit dodgy, but genius. And Alpine may need some of that right now because on their own, I think they could struggle to attract those big names and big suppliers that they need to become a front-running team once again. Flavio could just add that little extra thing to push deals over the line. And there have been rumours of Alpine potentially abandoning their Renault engines, as there have been speculation that Renault will be cancelling their F1 project from 2026 onwards. And this is potentially devastating news, and although it would be a shame to see Renault out of the sport, it means Alpine, if they are still called Alpine by then, will need a new engine. Now, Mercedes will be losing one of its engine customers in 2026 when Aston Martin switches over to Honda power. And this is exactly where I sense Flavio could step in
and snap up those engines that Aston Martin don't want anymore. Him and Toto seem to get on quite well, and it just seems like the logical thing should Renault decide to pull out of the sport. Both parties would want to work with each other, and it just seems like this could be the new beginning for the Enstone team. And it doesn't just stop at engines either, because Alpine still need to secure a second driver for the 2025 season. They've already extended their deal with Pierre Gasly, and they still need someone to work alongside him who is fast and also a team player. And ever since Flavio is back in the game, another name has popped up completely out of the blue, and that is Carlos Sainz, a name that never would have been on Alpine's list before. And same story again, Alpine I don't think would have had a hope at attracting the likes of Sainz, but Flavio is the guy that could just make the difference. We've seen some very interesting photos of him recently with Carlos Sainz Sr., of course the daddy of Carlos Sainz Jr., but is still very influential in what his son does. And let's not forget, Flavio is still the manager of Fernando Alonso. Now imagine if he was to use Alonso and Sainz Sr. in some sort of pincer movement to help secure the signature of Carlos Sainz. Now that would be a sublime move. Sainz and Gasly I think would work very well together, and with a Mercedes engine in the back, who knows, that could be the catalyst for this team to get back up the grid again. Now I would fully support Alpine giving a young driver a shot like Jack Doohan, but when the very existence of the team is up for question, a safe pair of hands like Sainz just takes priority. If all works well, might he even be able to tempt Alonso back to Team Enstone after maybe 2 more disappointing years at Aston Martin? You never know, could be interesting. So I already sense with Briatore being back at the team as an executive advisor, it already opens doors to Alpine which were previously locked. And there's a possibility that he could help shake Renault Group and Alpine out of their sleepwalk to the F1 graveyard. Maybe even remind Renault of how important this team really is. And also show them what steps you have to take and what you need to do to make the team successful. I mean, granted, F1 has changed a lot since the Benetton and Renault F1 championship days, but this is why I think he's been hired. I think he still has something to offer. But with this whole thing, I suppose I can't really sit on the fence about Flavio's time in F1. More importantly, the shenanigans he did get up to. Now, I think Crashgate was an awful thing. It put the sport in a very bad light, and Flavio was quite rightly guilty. But the main difference, in my opinion, between Flavio and team principals and team managers before and since is that Flavio got found out. I think if you got many of the team principals and people in the FIA to fully lay their cards out on the table for everyone to see, we would be stunned and absolutely shocked by the results and what was actually going on, and also things that may have been confidential for so many years. Alpine are not looking at this emotionally. They've made an absolutely logical decision to try and plug a knowledge gap and help them climb up the grid. A very unexpected decision, a very risky decision, but let's wait and see if this does pay off and make a difference. So with that, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you support him coming back? Do you not? Will he make a difference? Will he not make a difference? Let me know what your thoughts are. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm Paul, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers.